Okay, Burlington on the spot. Thanks for coming in, Doc.
You're welcome.
Do you want to introduce yourself and just give a little background and let everyone know who you are and what you're doing and all that good stuff?
Sure. My name is Dr. Richard A Ramos. I'm a chiropractor at the level, or that's how I got into where we're at today. Been in this for 25 years, February 3rd. My dad was actually in this practice for 54 years. We practice completely different than the old school, but that's how I am. I'm a why guy. So if somebody says that can't be done, or I don't know why that is, then I'm the why guy. Is like, why can't we? Especially in this day and age.
Yeah,
it's like, why can't we? Is there an answer? Well, I don't know. Well, I'm a why guy. So that kind of gets me in trouble sometimes. We jump down the rabbit hole. I've been down many rabbit holes, but it's just a learning process. So anyway, we're moved back into this community where I was born and raised, and that's where my morals and values really came from, I believe, in a small town, rural atmosphere. And I just want to bring back to what I've gained of the 15 years that I was out and away from this area, and then come back and just take the knowledge that I've learned, and then all those whys that I asked have led me down different paths in the different styles of healing. That may be homeopathy, that may be in the world of acupuncture, nutritional, meditation, hypnosis, brain-based wellness, stem cells. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, and that's all those things I want to touch on, because all of those things fascinate me, especially stem cells. And I know we're going to talk a lot about that. I guess I didn't realize, too, that there was hypnosis. You threw that one out there, too.
Yeah.
So all of those things, and I know with stem cells, it's especially over the last few years, it's really kind of started bubbling up to the mainstream. You have, podcasts like Joe Rogan where people are going on there. I think it's getting more mainstream, I guess, exposure. I don't know about acceptance per se, but how long has stem cell been in the mainstream consciousness?
I think that, I knew about it 5 years ago, but it wasn't from within the United States. That was from a friend of ours in Cabo, and his daughter or his dad, they had went to Los Cabos. And so him and I, as a friend, he's actually from Canada. And so then we got to talking about what happened to his dad and what happened to his wife. And so I was like, well, then if that's in Mexico, then how can we make this happen for my patients or for this community? And so long story short, then we end up getting into a conversation with this gentleman, and then he hooked us up to this place in Guadalajara. And so that was like 5 years ago is when I first became known about it, of using stem cells.
Well, what happened down there specifically?
So his dad was 90. He was on 24/7 care. He had to have someone in with him in the house, had to have someone help him do showers. And so they went, and he had a systemic stem cell, which is an IV infusion, in Los Cabos. So about 6 weeks later, they noticed that now he was forgetting his walker, because before he was on his walker all the time. He couldn't navigate without a walker.
Right.
And 3 months, then they're at church on a Sunday, and he gets his dad's walker out, and so his dad takes off, walks into church. And so church is over, and then they're back out to the car, and they go looking around the car for his dad, and his dad's sitting in his back seat. And then and he says, "Dad, where's your walker at?" He goes, "Oh, I left it in the church." So he went from having to typically have to have somebody in the shower with him, 24/7 care, to now the two sons are like, "Dad, you got to slow down." And then my friend, he said, one day I'm sitting in my house, and my dad comes bopping in. He goes, "Hey, let's go have a beer." And so his life completely changed. And so when I heard that story, I was like, wow, if this can happen for one, then it can happen for 1,000 or more.
Right.
And so it's cutting edge, and I've always been on that. I've always been back to that why guy. I've always been on that cutting edge, like, all right, why can't we do this? What's out there that we can have and we can possess, that we can help change people's lives? So that's where I started down that rabbit hole. And so that long story short is we actually became a liaison. That company in Mexico is called Chiropractor, and where we became a liaison where now this didn't manifest, but where we would have patients and we were going to take them to Guadalajara, walk them through the whole thing and for the treatment, and then come back. So obviously that's a high dollar price tag. Mm-hmm. And so that really now didn't manifest, but then that led me to believe, like, all right, if we could go to those extremes to do that for the people in Kit Carson County or surrounding counties to Guadalajara, then why can't we offer that in Kit Carson County?
Right. Well, and I think too, it's one of those things where if you hear something like that, and you didn't know anything about it at the time, right?
Correct.
I mean, or not much.
Not much.
I mean, we all, yeah. So you then hear an actual story from somebody like that, somebody who's 90, and it's that life changing. That's where you must have been like, I want to go figure everything out. What is this? How does it work?
Correct.
And so that's why you were so ready to go down and figure that out.
Correct.
And then that next step was figuring out or I guess what was the progression then? Once you found that out here, at that time, it wasn't a viable option here. Like you had to go down there and take somebody. You couldn't do it here.
That's correct. That at that time,
because of legality, or
correct, because of legality reasons, and that was not. They couldn't bring that into the States, and so we had to go. We had to go there.
What year was that in?
That was roughly 5-6 years ago.
When did it change that then you could start doing it here?
I'm going to say 3. 2. I'm going to say probably 3. This is to my knowledge.
Okay.
There might have been. I mean, there might have been those avenues out there, but to my knowledge, that's where we're at on that time frame.
So that's where you were, and then I guess walk me through how that happened, how you got involved with it here, and then we'll talk a little bit about it.
That was a process. Then through Chiropractor is where it was just so. I mean, it was such a price tag
to go down there.
To go down there. I mean, we have, and you're there for a week, and so I mean, plane flights, motels, the stem cell injections themselves. And then potential follow-up if we're dealing with diabetes or an autoimmune. So there's more follow-ups, and now then also comes a piece of, well, my grandma can't travel
right
there and back. I mean, that's not a viable option, and so then it was like, all right, how can we make this happen here? And so we had a friend that he was actually my ex-boss when I was back in the engineer days, and his name's John, and I can share that name. And so I was talking to John one time over dinner in the Springs with him and his wife Mary, and he said that he was having to have a hip replacement, his left hip. He's 78, with MS, and used to be a pilot. He can't be a pilot no more because of his optic neuritis from MS. So he says, "What do you know about stem cells?" I said, "Well, I know a lot about stem cells. What do you want?" And he goes, "Well, he needed his left hip replaced, and he's seen this advertisement on KRDO in the Springs."
Okay.
And he went and met with his medical doctor, and this medical doctor said, "Well, I think you're a candidate for stem cells instead of having a hip replacement." So I was asking him, "All right, that's fine, but stem cells is a broad category. So like out here, somebody says, well, I'm going to go plant corn. Well, what corn are you going to plant? Because, you could sit 5 farmers in here and all 5 of you tell you which different seed to plant to get a better yield, right?
Okay, right.
Whatever that is, Pioneer, DeKalb, whatever that may be. Well, stem cells in a way is the same. because stem cells is not stem cells. I can say, well, it's an umbilical stem cell, or I can say it's an adipose stem cell, or I can say it's a bone marrow stem cell, or we can say it's a stem cell from your own blood, which is a PRP, a platelet-rich plasma, which, based upon your age, there's not many stem cells in the blood. And so that's where John was talking about. And he goes, well, I don't know that.
Huh.
I said, well, then if you don't know that, then you need to find out before you have that done. So he went back and talked to this medical doctor, and he says, well, we're going to do PRPs. And so John's 78. And at 80, so I don't know about 78, but at age 80, 1 out of 400,000 cells has a stem cell. So at 65, 1 out of 200,000 has a stem cell.
In our own body.
In our own body, in our own blood. Because as we age, then just like anything else,
it just gets...
It diminishes, right?
Right.
And so, so I told John, I said, if I was you, I wouldn't do that. I said, but I have a solution. So at the meantime, then I've been working with a place in the Springs, and a biogenics company that's who we work with, but not knowing the full ramification behind umbilical cord stem cells. So, but I knew the difference between a PRPs or adipose or a bone marrow out of a 78-year-old. So we made arrangements. He went and had it done. He had an injection. I don't know the milliliters or the amount of cells he got. I can guess, but I don't know exact that. 4 months later, post MRI, brand new hip, no surgery.
Wow. Jeez.
And so then,
and that wasn't the his own though.
No, that was not
after
his
you
own.
Consulted with him, he went back to that doctor and they came up with a different solution. Or no, or you. It was.
Yeah, he went back to his doctor and found out that it was not an umbilical stem cell.
Oh, okay.
And so then he called and I said, all right, let me set you up. So I'm going to hit pause on there. Then I'm on a podcast because our office is brain-based wellness. So we really operate we are chiropractic at its core, but we look above the shoulders.
Okay.
Because I can do whatever I want to do on the spine, and that does have significant ramifications to our health. But now what happens if we tie in and looking into our higher upper motor cortex, or looking into our emotions of our brain and how that interplays into our spine and into our organs and how the organs are developing. If I'm in this constant state of anxiety and worry, then there's a really potential that I develop an ulcer.
Yeah.
Now, some people say, well, you have to have H. pylori bacteria for it to happen that. Well, if we're in the state of anxiety and worrisome, then our natural immune system is going to drop, and we fight viruses and bacteria every single day. So then how can you say that based upon your anxiety, you're this unknown that's creating this worrisome in your world, that's decreasing your immune system? Now your immune system can't fight what you are susceptible every single day, and then you create an ulcer, right?
Right.
So our office is brain-based wellness based upon that. Maybe simple, in my mind it's simple, but maybe it's not simple concept. So when we're looking at the whole aspect of stem cells, then we're looking at this brain-based wellness, and that's where I said pause earlier, because I was on a podcast. I was listening to a podcast similar like to this, and on brain-based wellness from a professional coach that I had 20 years ago.
Okay.
And his name is Dr. Bob Hoffman. And he's talking to this guy named Dr. Porter, and they just so be happening interviewing a guy named Brian Savitsky from Biogenics, who's a stem cells.
Okay.
So I just talked to my buddy John in the Springs, a few months ago, and now I'm listening to these people that mentored me for 15 years, and on how they have traveled the world to fix his wife's fibromyalgia, and they've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in really didn't have no help. Then she gets an injection from the umbilical stem cells from Biogenics, and with 3 months, she's pain free. And now these guys are very good friends of mine, and she is still pain free.
Wow. Because I know fibromyalgia, or I think I said that right. That's the one where you have pain, but you can't really figure out what it's coming from, right?
Correct.
They don't have a good, pain management is the only solution. There's not a cure or anything because doctors aren't sure what causes it.
That is correct. And typically, fibro is a complexity of conditions. It's a complex of toxicity, and that toxicity can be heavy metal toxicity, that can be pesticide toxicity, that could be emotional toxicity. There's a lot tied into that, and that's why it's so difficult to treat and deal with.
And how long has she been pain free?
That was 2 years ago.
And is this something she has to keep repeating then, like once every 6 months, or?
She does once a year.
Once a year?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's not bad. Okay, so then here's my question on. We're going to keep talking about stem cells. We went into that.
Sure.
So let's take it somebody who, like even my mom, and I might know a little bit more, but she would know anything, or somebody listening to this that doesn't have any idea. Like what is a stem cell exactly? Where, can you help us understand that, and where it comes from, and then where the therapy comes from, and just give us a little bit of detail? Like I don't know anything.
Okay, sure. So I'm gonna talk in the world of Biogenics, is because that's the company that we use.
Okay.
But from a typical stem cell is pretty much going to act the same, except the fact that if we're dealing into a different type of a cell, and so a different cell, what's called a mesenchymal cell, or a hematopoietic cell. And so there's different cells, but those are the two cells that really are with Biogenics stem cells.
Gotcha.
So those cells have the ability to duplicate or replicate whatever tissue they come in contact with. Okay, so back to bare bones, the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord is in that mommy and tied to that embryo. And through that umbilical cord is what allows the embryo to grow into that little boy, little girl, right?
Right.
So that's the channel that it goes through. And there's a lot of components inside of that umbilical cord, but for simplicity's sake, then we're talking about the mesenchymal cell. So those cells, like I said, have the ability to replicate anything that it comes in contact with. And there's no blood typing, there's no blood matching, there's no RNA DNA matching that needs to be done, because those are completely virgin. They're called omnipotent. So, I'm going to say this if you believe it or not, but it's like God. It's omnipresent.
Okay.
Right. Omnipotent. That it has the ability to potentialize anything that it comes in contact with. So either we can. So on the therapy part, we can either do it a single injection into a muscle fiber,
okay,
or an injection into a joint capsule, or we can do an IV injection into directing a potential organ that's in trouble.
Gotcha. So it's almost like a miracle cell, basically, if you think about it. I mean, if it can turn into anything else and it can help heal, I guess, those different things. I mean, it really is
that is completely correct. I mean, completely correct. It is in my opinion, is the absolute closest thing on the planet that is that miracle cell.
Now,
it's that silver bullet.
Gotcha. Now, do you think more traditional doctors, and is it getting more widespread acceptance now? Are we seeing that, or what do you think?
I'm going to say my jury's out. Okay. At the moment. We've had so November 15th will be our first year anniversary of doing stem cells. So in that first year, we've had more battles with docs than there had people acceptance. And so an interesting concept is through the VA. So Biogenics company is the only stem cell company that the Veterans Administration uses for all their people. The only company. So I have found out a conversation through my rep that we're dealing with a gentleman that is facing kidney transplant. And so he says, well, we can totally get him into the VA. Of course, now with the whole COVID thing,
Right.
That's a crapshoot. However, he stated that there are docs in the VA in Denver that do stem cells. But majority of the docs in the VA don't believe in stem cell therapy.
Huh.
So based upon that verbiage, based upon what he told me, I still think it's a minority, not a majority.
And that's just because they are stuck in a mindset of like traditional Western medicine versus other things that could potentially work, and they're not being taught in school yet. I mean, it seems like it maybe down the road it'll get adopted, but right now it has to go through all these things before it actually becomes widely accepted.
Right. Because there's most of what I've heard in the last year is like, well, you're just wasting your money, that there's no research. Well, if you go PubMed.gov right now, that's the online medical library, there's over 600,000 studies of showing the efficiency of what stem cells can do. Now, a lot of those studies says, well, we need further research. Well, that's double-blind studies, and that's what the verbiage they use. But it is being widely used, but it's not. I can't say it's not being taught in med schools because I haven't went through med school.
Right.
But I would make the assumption that's not a mainstream curriculum in
yet.
There. Yet. And so we've had, actually in the last month, we've actually had 3 patients that come through and they see our signs in the office about stem cells, and they say, well, I have an insurance that pays for that. It's like, oh, really? So they bring it in and we go through and look at it, but it's only based upon cancer. There's additional rider that they have through their insurance that states that, yes, if you're being treated for cancer, then there may be coverage. And I say may because it's insurance.
Yeah.
I mean, who in the heck knows?
No, you don't know. And they're all different. So you don't
Right.
know what they're actually going to cover, what they're going to pay. Transparency isn't really
right.
why,
Even if they do tell you that they're going to pay for it, and
Right.
now you're $500,000 in, and they say, oh yeah, because of this definition, and that's the key is when I read the definition, it's like, well, based upon the definition doesn't cover us, because it talks about transplantation, and so in that definition, transplantation is that it's coming from a different source, not within your own. And so based upon that, they don't cover it.
Okay.
Based upon one word.
Right. But I mean, the fact that some are actually covering it and
Yes.
have it as an option, that's a good sign.
Yes,
I mean,
it
that
is.
means you must start seeing, oh, okay.
Yes, it is.
And you hear all these, there's podcasts, there's big celebrities like Rogan I mentioned
Right.
that have people on talking about results. It can't all, I mean, at some point you have to be like address that it works.
Right.
And I get that there's different versions, and with anything, right, there's going to be snake oil salesman or thing like that, so that gives it a bad name. I guess that's a good question. What are the misconceptions about that?
So the biggest,
Or people why they might not want to do it.
the one big misconception is that it comes from aborted fetuses. I mean, we have a big sign in our office, and this has happened multiple times, that they've walked in, especially like a new patient. They don't know me.
Right.
And they come in the office and they'll say, the last lady said, sir. She goes, sir, I just have to ask. She says, so you do stem cells? I said, yes, we do. So are you using aborted fetuses? I said, no, we're not. She goes, are you sure? I said, I'm 100% absolutely sure. And if that was the only way doing stem cell, I wouldn't be doing it.
Right.
And so based upon that, that's illegal in the United States. And so you go clear back into that's where why United States is so far behind. And I think actually that comes on when, wasn't Joe Rogan Mel Gibson?
Yeah, I think he was on there. I didn't see that whole episode, but it was like his dad.
He was talking about his dad.
But it worked.
Yeah,
I mean,
took him to Panama.
yeah.
Yeah. And so the back in the whole Bush administration is when they shut down all research on stem cell, because there was that whole question in that argument is like, all right, are they coming from aborted feces? Are they coming from abortions? Where are they coming from? And so all that was shut down for that period of time. But I do know that was shut down in the Bush administration up until recently. But the rest of the world, has just been cranking it. Mm-hmm. They still been doing the research, and who knows where they use it, where it comes from. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's probably where some of the misconception comes from, because not everyone has the rules that we have or regulations.
Correct.
And I'm sure there's, you don't know how much you see that's true, but you always see stories of sketchy things going on in China or other countries with research. So, well, that's good. What, any other things that you hear from people, like why they wouldn't want to do it, or is it that the main question you get? Or
the main question is how do I know it's going to work?
Yeah, will it work? I was going to say that too.
Is how do you know it's going to work? And so we go. It's that piece that we go back to, that it comes from the umbilical cord. In biogenics, all the cords that they collect from is a successful, healthy pregnancy within the United States. And only 2% of those pass the 3-tiered testing process to make sure that they are absolutely clean of all diseases, of all genetic dispositions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you think about, and I don't know, I know at one time there was like 47 hospitals. I'm sure that number's grown by now. I don't get into those kind of logistics.
Right.
But only 2% of all those passes in order for us doctors to use. And it's just not, in yes, we're a chiropractic office. I don't do the injection.
Right. You have a nurse, right?
So we have a nurse practitioner.
Okay.
And that is required by law in the state. We can actually use a physician assistant, but a nurse practitioner is much easier to go that route. It's less hoops we have to jump through. And that in itself was a blessing that we were able to do this, because that's not easy to find a nurse practitioner that wants to come from a metro area to rural Colorado to do injections, stem cell injections. One, now you still got to find the person that believes in an alternative therapy to surgery or whichever. And, and I'm not knocking surgery, because there's a time and place for that.
Right.
But there's also a time and place and a prevention for other measures such as stem cells. So the biggest thing is that, like, how do I know that it's going to work? So it goes back to that piece, is that's a umbilical cord that is God-derived. That baby, that embryo will not grow into a successful, healthy infant without that umbilical cord. And those cells are harvested from that cord, which is the lifeline to that baby. Then how does it not work?
Right. And so these are people that have donated. Is that how it works?
Yeah.
And then is there going to be a shortage then? I mean, as this gets more, because I'm just thinking that through, right? I mean, because it's a pretty small percentage that actually, if you're doing genetic testing or making sure that's that 2%, I mean, so at some point, is it going to be, if it does get wider acceptance, I could see how that could be a problem too, right?
It is a potential, but I don't think, I can't say there would never be a shortage, but I'm been in this practice for 25 years and being around my dad for all that time before he passed. I do not see stem cell therapy be covered by insurance for joint replacement, or to help someone with their diabetes, or to help someone with their,
because it's not cost effective and it won't be.
No, not at all. I mean, and it's the world that we live in. If we look at, let's say we take a patient that has diabetes.
Okay.
So typically that patient, he or may not be overweight, but I'll pick on a guy. I can do that because I'm a guy. So we take a farmer, because that's where we live. All right.
Okay.
So we got this farmer. He works hard, but his what he puts in his mouth is kind of what he probably grew up living from his mom and dad. Well, because of all the process that our seeds and our food goes through, it's not like what we used to have when my mom and dad was working, right, and growing up. So now I have this patient that works hard all the time. He probably might not eat healthy, under a lot of stress, and I really don't like to jump into that stress word, but it is a part of life.
Right.
So now all of a sudden he has diabetes. So there's potential that with the diabetes he's overweight. There's a potential that he has a blood pressure issue. There's a potential that his blood chemistry shows he has high cholesterol.
Yep.
That his lipids are high. Mm-hmm. So now typically that person's going to be in a potential what's called a metabolic syndrome because he has those conditions. So most likely he's on a metformin, or he's on a some type of blood sugar issue. He's on some type of a blood pressure issue, mm-hmm. or a blood pressure med. He's probably on some kind of a statin cholesterol. All right. So now let's say, and that's evolving. That's lifelong. Right. So in the farm world, in the pharmaceutical world, that's big. Right. So,
yeah.
So now let's say if we would take that single individual and we would give them, and he said if he's over 200 pounds, then he has to have a dose of 90 million stem cells. So we do an IV infusion, 90 million stem cells, and it changes his blood chemistry. It changes his blood sugar. It changes his liver functions, which in turn will probably change his hypertension in his heart. It could be potential to change the kidney functions. Now what happens? Now he may start losing weight. Now he may say, hey, you know what? I feel a little bit better. Maybe I want to change my lifestyle. Maybe now I want to be reliant on myself a little bit more, not on my meds. And so now the game may change. And now, instead of feeling all the medicines, now he's feeling better. Now he has a different game in his picture. Maybe he's starting to have a different lifestyle. Maybe he says, gosh, maybe I should think about what I'm eating. Do I go through McDonald's every morning before I head to the field? Or am I a little proactive and do something for myself? So now if you look at that in a 20, 30, 40-year process, and even if he have to have injection every 2 years, because the stem cells, they replicate. So he doesn't get just 90 million stem cells stuck in his vein, because within 28 hours, those 90 million stem cells duplicate. So now there's 180 million in there working on him. So if you think about 180 million little factory workers working on the organs in his body based upon the hierarchy that is going on. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is by the inflammatory markers that the organs are kicking off.
Right.
So those duplicate for a year. So let's say, and I don't even know what that number is. I haven't crushed that number. What 90 million is doing in the year's time. I mean, that's a big number.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say all of a sudden his life changes in a year. Let's just say a year.
Yep.
Now he's not on these meds. Now look at what the cost of those meds for 20, 30, 40 years is to Big Pharma. Now they don't get it.
Right. It's true.
And so unfortunately it comes to this point of that being reactive in pharmaceutical world or being proactive in the stem cell world.
Yeah. And there's other things like that. I think like CBD.
Absolutely.
There's other things where
Absolutely.
you can see them fighting that.
Absolutely.
And it makes sense. I mean, you don't have to be a brain scientist to be like, okay, you're going to be taking a big piece of that pie.
Right.
You know what I mean? So of course they're going to push back or inevitably they're going to want to take it over. Right.
True.
That would be the other thing where it's like, okay, if we're going to do this, then we're going to try and take it over and we'll be the ones that administer and make all the money off of it. So I could see that. With that scenario, if you have all those things going on and you get it, right? So you have, because I have a lot of, family history like that. Mm-hmm. So you have heart history, diabetes, and all those things, and you were to take it. It just basically, if you do it through an IV, it's searching out trouble areas versus like taking it locally, right? Like if you were going to try and concentrate it towards, that was one of the
Correct.
things on Rogan where they were talking sports science. Some athletes are using it, I think.
Right.
Like if you have a local, like your shoulder or something, and trying to get a shot directly in.
Correct.
Versus an IV. So the IV is going to find all those things and continue to work.
Correct. And it finds that out is because so like in our office, when we have a protocol, so three days before your injection, then we do a full med review. But 3 days before that, we want to make sure that you are not taking any anti-inflammatory, either prescription, over the counter, or natural. So not even like a fish oil.
No ibuprofen. Nothing.
No ibuprofen at all. You can do Tylenol if you're going to have to be for pain relief.
Okay.
Which a lot of our people they've come to us. They have bulges, disc bulges in their neck or their lower back, or they have a blown knee, or their knee replacement, or they've had failed back surgery. So most of them they've been in a lot of pain. So they can still do the Tylenol factor, but any kind of anti-inflammatory, like I said, from an omega-3 fatty acid to Celebrex or whatever it may be, they can't take that for 3 days. And the reason is because we want that area of the body.
Oh, okay.
Because it's going to be inflamed.
Gotcha.
And so it's going to be kicking off a signal. It's going to be kicking off an inflammatory signal. So when those cells are injected either locally into the joint or into the muscle or into the IV,
you want it to be,
they will pick up. Then that's the beauty of the mesenchymal hematopoietic cell. They will pick up that inflammatory marker, and they will go directly to that area and begin fixing it.
wow. So you want it to be as inflamed as possible.
Yeah.
So it's easy for it to find it and go right to the area that needs it the most.
Yeah, actually, we had one lady that reminds me. She had 2 back surgeries, and then multiple other kind of injections. So she came to us, and so she was a candidate. She was, all right, we want to do this. Well, so she made sure she cleaned her house, she mowed your yard, everything the day before she had her injection.
She's like, you want to see inflammation?
Yeah, and she had great success.
So how many other people are you seeing that are doing these type of, I don't think there's anyone around here, right? I mean, in our region,
No.
Is there anyone? I mean,
No, there's not. We did our study before we put our billboard up on I-70. It's just east of the Kansas exit, or Canrado exit. So when we did our study, then there might be one person up in North Dakota, but that's a kind of a maybe hit or miss. But far as what we could find, going north, you're going to go into Canada. You go south in Albuquerque. Of course, the Front Range is
Denver. Do they have?
Yeah, Denver. Yeah,
Okay.
Denver and Springs has it, and then heading east to Salina, Wichita.
Gotcha.
So there's a big area that nobody's doing it. And like I said, I mean, it wasn't not easy to make this all happen.
Especially out here.
Especially out
that's
here.
That's awesome that you got it to happen. So is there a place where you guys as a community are sharing stories, just like best practices and stuff? Because I don't know, is there some place where it gets talked about a little bit? Or is it just each individual person on podcasts, I mean, it's just like you hear these stories that are like life-changing. And I don't know, is there a place where you guys share these stories?
The only place, the place we share in it, we have a testimonial book inside the office with their testimony and their picture. And then we, putting them on our website.
Right.
But otherwise, I don't.
Well, and I know that I get HIPAA and there's going to be issues with that and stuff, I guess. But I mean, I was just wondering if you guys, like other health and wellness doctors, chiropractors, if there was a place where you guys were trying to share this stuff.
I don't think so, but that's a great idea.
And just because, it would be cool because if more people see that and you're like, this happened.
Right.
And then they are going to be more apt to be like, well, how do I get involved with that?
Right.
Especially if you're like curing people of things. And I know cure is a bad word, but if it's life-changing therapy,
right. Right. And and it's always, I could probably say with a shadow of a doubt that there may be somebody on the fence. Like we're getting ready to do our injections. We do them once a month. So next Friday we'll do our injections. It's typically what we do is on a Friday. And they may be on the fence. And we say, hey, here's this COPD guy, and here's his testimonial. And they read it.
It had COPD.
That had COPD. Yeah, that National Jewy says, you got to put your affairs in order. There's nothing else we can do for you. And he's on 25 meds a day, literally 25 meds a day. Now he's on 11. And he tried to commit suicide. He was under suicide watch. Now the doctor's office had called him and said, well, we haven't heard from you in 8 months. We just want to make sure you're okay. Oh, geez. And he says, well, yeah, I had a stem cell infusion and my life has changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're like, okay.
Yeah. His story is absolutely amazing. And he's from Kimball, Nebraska. He hadn't driven in 3 years. I mean, he showed in the office about 2 months ago, and typically his wife drives. He's in obviously the passenger side. He rolls in his oxygen bottle, sits in the first chair. He sits there 15, 20 minutes before he can get his air to go back to the treatment room just for a chiropractic treatment, because that does seem to help him out. Roughly 2 months ago, then I saw him pull up, and he didn't pull up in the handicap spot.
Oh.
And he was driving.
Right.
Which I've never seen him drive in my life.
That's pretty awesome.
And when he walked in, he didn't have his oxygen bottle in his travel thing. He was carrying it. And he walked into the front office and stood there and talked to us for the entire time before we took him back to his office. He never did once sit down. And I said, you got tan lines. He goes, yeah. He goes, I've done more stuff in this spring than I have done in 3 years. This gentleman.
How old is he?
76, I think. 76 or 78. So I think he's 76.
Yeah.
And he couldn't even take the dishes, wash the dishes off out of the sink for lunch and put them in the dishwasher while he was on oxygen without having to sit down. He couldn't take the laundry out of the washing machine and put them in the dryer without sitting down because he was fatigued completely doing that.
Right.
Now he's ripping shrubs out. He's planting grass. He's driving. He's sassy as hell. Before he wasn't that way.
Well, he didn't feel good. He couldn't breathe.
It just depressed, and
Right.
At the bottom part of his testimony, which is in my office, it basically states that he goes, I have my life back and I can enjoy my grandchildren now.
Gotcha. And then how long has he been on the protocol?
December.
So just a year? Or coming up on under a year?
Yeah. Yeah.
Time's all weird because the last 8 months.
And he's supposed to be, and his protocol was actually supposed to get a second injection. And so I called and talked to him. I said, and he says, well, let me know how you're doing. All right. So I called him like 3 months. And so he should have had another one at 6 weeks. And he goes, I had my lung function test done, and my pulmonologist walked in here. He goes, this is impossible. Lungs do not regenerate. He goes, he goes, what'd you do? And so he told him. And this guy in Nebraska, he was completely on board.
Well, yeah, if you see something like that happen, then you got to start asking questions, or you're not a good doctor.
Well,
I'm not trying to say it, but
right.
I'm not a doctor. So I'm just saying, if you see something like that, you have to start. Your oath is to making healing people, not to just an institution, Or
right.
So I mean, I would think that would start to warrant you to start researching that.
Yes, so, I mean, for the most part, but not always. We've ran into that where they've seen other patients and they'll still say, well, you're just wasting your money. So,
well, I mean, couldn't there be a case where maybe it doesn't work for everyone the same?
Sure.
Because everybody's body's different.
Sure, absolutely. We do have two. We do have two people that they had their injections done. They did really, really well for 6 months, completely pain-free. And now they're experiencing discomfort again, but it is not at the magnitude that it was before. Before, they didn't want to get up and do anything. They didn't want to get up and clean their house. They didn't want to navigate. Now they can still do it, but they have discomfort. So still their quality of life changed.
Right. So you think professional athletes are starting to use this too?
Oh,
You're not hearing about it?
I think in the world of professional athletes, it's probably been there for a very, very, very long time.
Really?
I really think so.
Like 10 years or more, and they've been doing it, or?
Well, I bet, especially your great athletes, your elite athletes, and
because they could get it from other countries
sure,
earlier
can,
and stuff, just like maybe
jump,
steroids, or
they can go jump the pond. They got the money to fly to Germany or Russia or wherever they want to go to have that done. And there's no law saying you can't do that.
Gotcha. Huh. I didn't even think about that it might have been in the NFL already for years and we didn't even know it.
Oh, it's very possible.
To heal and to get back on when there's that kind of money involved.
Right.
Right? Because that's your business. It's your body. So.
Right.
Huh. Interesting. I had never thought about that. Well, and then anything else on stem cells do you think that we should know before I kind of segue into some other sports medicine and just...
I'll do my personal story is that 4 weeks ago tomorrow, then I had my own stem cells done.
Oh, I didn't realize that you did that.
So we did a full panel. We did a full fasting blood panel. I did every value that we could pretty much do as far as a measurable. And then I had because I really pretty much in general health, besides a little overweight, borderline flow back and forth with blood sugar issue.
Okay.
And so I had a 60 million stem cell IV infusion to basically reset my health.
Okay.
So have that potential of resetting my health back from 8 to 15 years. So we will redo a study in 90 days, a new blood panel. And we'll do that every 90 days for a year because, as I mentioned before, that the stem cells will duplicate or replicate for the next 12 months. So we are going to do the same type of blood chemistry work for the next 90 days for a total year and see where I'm at a year. So within 4 weeks, so in 4 weeks I've dropped 15 pounds. I haven't done anything different. Dropped 3 notches or increase, I guess. Yeah, I better say, I don't know how that works. Increase, decrease, notches on my belt. Nonetheless, it's better.
Okay, you've lost weight. Gotcha.
And
when did you do your injection?
4 weeks ago tomorrow.
Okay. Well, that's why I didn't know. Okay.
And within 3 days, and there's a healing crisis. I mean, typically everybody will have some kind of healing crisis. So I had like this massive headache for like 3 hours. It wasn't fun.
So how long did it take to do the injection? Is that like an all day thing?
Oh, no, it's 30 minutes.
Okay. And then are you just taking the whole day off after that?
I take 3 days.
So is that what the typical person does?
Yeah.
So you need to go in, do it, and then just taking it easy for 3 days?
Yeah, you don't have to be bed rest for 3 days, but you need to chill out. Don't be going out tilling your yard and
you're just letting your body adjust and get used to it.
Right, because the other piece of that is you don't want to go out and do something like I'm out in my yard and I crash on my knee and I jack up my knee. Well, then even though I did the stem cells IV, they're inside of me, right?
Right.
So if I jack up my knee, now all of a sudden this knee's going to go boom.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And it's going to
go right to that.
Inflamed. And so you're going to have 15, 20% of those take off or even maybe more, but definitely 15, 20% of those take off and go to the area of injury.
Huh.
And so we just want you to chill out.
So you did your blood panel before you did this?
Absolutely.
And then was it like just basic, right? Like LDL, HDL, and then like liver and kidney and all that? Or was it like that bigger one that you can do that has all those metrics?
Yeah, we do the big one.
Okay.
And for me, this does have nothing to do with stem cells, but for me, then we also did we did 4 baseline cancer markers. Just because I'm 55, my dad died of prostate cancer. And so we'll say, hey, let's set a baseline here. Let's be preventive.
How do you do that? I mean, like, what are those cancer? I didn't even know there was like a test, or is it just?
It's just on our requisition form on our labs. Now, so that's through us.
Okay.
So to go have that done for your insurance to pay for it, well, they're not going to do that because if you just say, well, I want to get tested for cancer. Well, do you have cancer? No. Do you have any signs of cancer? No. Well, then we can't do it. I mean,
but somebody could make that. Is it super expensive? I mean, to do a test like that, or
no,
huh?
no, not. I mean, not through. I'm in a co-op of docs that we have negotiated pricing with Quest Labs and LabCorp Labs, and so that we have this ability for a wellness check, and that's what we call it, is a wellness check, and so we can look at all that. We can establish baselines, not wait until you get that diagnosis, and like, holy crap, now what?
Well, and I don't even think people should wait until they're in their 50s. No. Or I mean, because if you have that in your family history, you need to start looking at those things in your 20s.
Correct.
Because there's certain things that you don't find out, especially in our culture with men. I don't know if it's changing, but a lot of men don't go to the doctors, especially when they're young. Mm-hmm. They're not going and getting physicals every year.
Right.
And if you have that in your history and the American diet and everything, I mean, there's people with high blood pressure that's genetic. There's nothing you can do about that. I mean, you could even change your diet. And even cholesterol and stuff. So it just feels like if you could do that with cancer too, if you know it's in your family, probably more people want to start doing that too.
Right. And it don't, I mean, in typically, I mean, I'm not a cancer expert, but typically that just doesn't happen overnight. Like I wake up this morning and I have it. It's been brewing. It's been in there brewing for years and years and years, just like breast cancer. It just don't happen overnight. The woman may find, in the shower, like, geez, I didn't notice this lump before, but it's been there. It's been working. It's just that finally now I find a symptom, and now I go get the blood test. Well, let's step back. Let's take a different picture, and let's see if we can get a different result by doing something different. But the thing, that's a change, and it's so hard for people to have a conscious thought of a change, regardless of what it is, especially for your health.
Right. Well, but I think one thing for me to change is when I started going every year, like my mindset changed from being where you're not in there and, ooh, should I go do that? And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I want to go, and I want to figure out everything that I can do to improve or catch it ahead of time. But it's a weird shift you have to have to feel comfortable with that. And so now that fascinates me, with the cancer and the wellness test. And maybe I definitely think the next time you do your blood work, it'd be cool to have you back on.
Yeah.
That'd be neat to hear what it is and what the differences were before and after, because you can talk about that. I mean, that's you.
Right. Yeah. And we have a handful of people.
You're the guinea pig.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm like, hey, I'm completely fine, because I mean, this, walk the talk, right?
Have you noticed a difference? I mean, are you feeling it already?
Yeah, I already feel different. My flexibility, I noticed in 3 days, in my flexibility, like to bend over, pick something off the floor. I mean, I could still do it, but it wasn't like what I could do 5 years ago. Definitely not 10 years ago. It was just stiff. I mean, it was just, it just wasn't as easy doing things or crawling around the yard, digging goat heads or whatever it may be, and then getting up. Getting down's not the problem,
right?
But getting up, and just noticed a whole change in that. My sleep pattern has changed for the better. One of the crazy things that's happened is that this is probably part of my weight issue, but is that my hobby is gourmet cooking,
right?
That
can be a problem.
Yeah. And so, especially when you got a pair, you just cannot have that fish or that steak or whatever that may be, or that chicken, and not pair it with a great wine, Right. I mean, you just can't do it.
They go hand in hand.
That's right. It's like, turn the switch on, the light bulb's supposed to come on.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, don't trust the skinny chef. Yep.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I don't have to worry about that. And so nighttime is that, like, off of work, my dinner time is just like that's like my ritual time. I mean, because you
love to cook.
I love to cook, and it's typically, if it's me or some of my friends, but we're always pushing the envelope. Like, all right, what else can we do? What else can we do? What twist can we do on this brisket or these ribs or this salmon we brought in from Alaska or whatever,
Right.
The crazy thing is now is that I gotta make myself eat at night because I don't have like this crave. I don't want to say craving, but I don't have this true desire to, hey, let's destroy the kitchen tonight and make something great. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see too in a couple more months and get the blood work and all of that. Huh. Yeah, you'll definitely have to come back for that. That'd be good to see. And then anti-aging, right? I mean, we've talked a little bit about that. Are you doing anything with that outside of stem cells right now? Or I'm just interested in some of the other stuff you're doing because I know you have the sports medicine side, and I wanted to get your opinion on, anti-aging, where we're at with that, maybe NMN and some of the, because you mentioned metformin. And I know that some people are taking metformin. I told you about the Dr. David Sinclair from Harvard. And he's a big proponent of NMN and then metformin, and he does that every day for anti-aging.
I don't know much about that.
Okay.
On the anti-aging factor, but so anti-aging. I mean, so if we have, I can't say that we truly coined that in the office, but we do things in the anti-aging as far as like we do. So anti-aging for breast health, we do thermography. So that's a high infrared digital camera. Is that really anti-aging?
What is it? So what does that do exactly?
So what that does, that picks up any kind of metabolic activity. So thermography actually has a potential of picking up activity, metabolic activity anywhere, but specifically the breasts. 5 to 8 years before a mammogram will pick it up.
Really?
So
what is that procedure like? Is it like a mammogram?
Nope. It's a high digital infrared camera, expensive camera. We bring a consultant out from Centennial. She comes to my office once a month. And then the room has to be like at 68, 70 degrees. And then it's like a 6 foot distance between the camera and then the patient. And they do high digital resolutions. And that picks up that metabolic activity.
Gotcha. And that's for men too? I mean,
men and women.
And so it's scanning kind of your whole body, and then it's seeing...
You have your options. You can do a full body, or you can do upper torso. Typically, that's what most people do is upper torso. And so that's basically from the top of the head to the bottom of the belly button. What
kind of people are doing that? I mean, is that like somebody who something's wrong, I'm not sure what, or is it people that are trying to preventative, where you like, hey, I'm age 40, it's time to go in and do it?
So 90% of them are women. And if you're a woman and you have any kind of history of breast cancer or any kind of cancer, then really at age 21, then you should start establishing baselines. There's no radiation to that. There's no damage to it. There's no touching. There's no smashing. There's no nothing to that. So for a man, then yes, you definitely do that to establish baselines. I mean, even for a woman that don't have that, there should still be those baselines established.
So what would it look like? I mean, where you've seen like a trouble area? I mean, is that where you do it and you're like, hey, I'm noticing something? I mean, how does it?
So yeah, I mean, with different organs, different areas show different things. Like the thyroid, it's like blue. If it's really, really blue, then that's not a good sign. Like in a breast area or in the neck area or lower abdomen, they'll be red. But then there may be a part that it's really red and it has a white center in it. That's not cool. So
what is it? What could that potentially be?
Well, that could potentially be cancerous. Okay, so but here it's a diagnostic tool. I mean, it's just that prevention. It's a preventive tool to say, hey,
I see something.
There's something going on here. So let's investigate more. And sometimes that does have to lead and go in to do a mammogram. But at 21, you're typically not going to do a mammogram. So let's say that now but let's say there's a lady at 25 and their aunt died of breast cancer. And at age 25, there's a baseline taken. The baseline in thermography established, let's say we take it today. In 3 months from now, we're going to do another one. Those two studies will establish your baseline. All right. So then everything's cool. Then let's do another one in a year. Now, let's say in a year, now I'm 26. And now we see, hey, there's a change here. So it doesn't make more sense and be more proactive. Say, all right, let's go investigate this now and not wait until I'm 40.
Yeah. And how long does it take?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. And then does insurance cover that or?
No, insurance doesn't cover that. So, but it's like $225.
Okay.
I mean, when we're talking the world of potential cancer, that is peanuts.
No, I totally agree. And I think that as you get older, you start to see it through a different lens. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
When making that case to somebody who's in their 20s, but if they have that history, and a lot of times that history brings other problems, so they're going to be more apt to understand that.
Correct.
Because if they have that history, then that means that somebody else has had cancer.
Correct.
So, okay, that makes sense.
But the out of sight, out of mind is a hard sell.
Yeah.
You know, and it shouldn't be a sell. I mean, it truly shouldn't be.
No, it should be but with health and wellness, I mean, if you get people that they're running, you're changing your diet, this is just something where you could go do the test. It makes me want to go do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to see. That's fascinating. I didn't know that you could even do that.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to mention is when you were talking about the farmer earlier, that we go and do that. I also think about that too, though. If you get that and you're working, and you talked about how it would make you maybe want to change behavior, I could see how you'd also be like, hey, I can go do stem cells again.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that could go either way, where you're like, all right, well, I feel great. It's almost like if you can go do that, you're not going to have to change your lifestyle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, to a point. I mean, you can't. See, what's the analogy? I want to jump back on a McDonald's, but that's all right. I don't like McDonald's. So, but if I go have that 90 million stem cell, and I'm still cranking the egg McMuffin and potato pancakes and a coffee and orange juice every morning, sooner or later it's not going to work.
Gotcha.
I mean, you're just completely defeating the purpose.
Mm-hmm. So that's what you have to have an understanding and a talk with and say, hey, look, this is part of it.
Right.
You have to make these changes just like you would with the medicine you were taking before.
Right.
Because if you're seeing a cardiologist or your normal practitioner, they're going to tell you to change diet, exercise, get sleep.
Right.
And all of those things.
Right. Absolutely.
Gotcha.
So and there's that's where that mind shift is. And just like you was talking about where like you started doing your blood work every year. And like, no, I want to go see what I've been doing. Do I get this result? So it's like, so I'm going to jump back on the farmer. It's like, all right, I've been planting this seed all this time, been doing this kind of fertilizer, but let's do something different with the fertilizer, still same the seed, and let's see if I get a different result. Right?
Right.
So it's the bridging the gap, bridging the thought of like, all right, what do you do as a farmer on your everyday life, everyday business in the field versus what do you do in your life? So you investigate the seed of whatever crop you're going to plant. Mm-hmm. You investigate, you have an agronomy report of your soil conditions. You have and then also on what kind of fertilizer do I need to have to fix my soil. So if we just bridge the gap, walk across the bridge and say, all right, my lifestyle, what I'm eating is the seed that I put in the ground. How I'm taking care of myself is the fertilizer that I'm putting on my ground. So in my mind, it's a simple conversion, but it may not be because over here it's a change. It's a big change here. Here, well, we're just going to let somebody else spray the crop and I'm not going to worry about it, mm-hmm. Right? Over here, now it's the human instinct, like, all right, I got to change my mindset.
Yep.
I can't be eating a bag of Doritos and Tostitos and a 6-pack of beer and fall asleep in my seat every night.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I have to change something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Well, no, and I see how it could be almost like the second lease on life type thing too. where you're like, oh, so I wasn't feeling good. I came in for a reason. Now I get that. Now I am feeling good. I want to change things. So I get that too. I can see that go either way.
And so we are working right now, and it's part of me doing this. And like I said, there's a handful. I actually have four guys and one lady, and they're sitting waiting for me. They're waiting kind of see, all right, what's going on. I take that back. One, it's a husband and wife team, and they want to be proactive. They're really proactive on their game, and they're going down this road of where they want to be doing. They're going to do the same thing that I did. They're going to do a full panel. They're going to do their systemic IVs, and they also have a nutritionist that we're working with out of Fort Collins. She's going to be working with us in creating this new protocol that we're working on right now, and it'll be a year's program. Ooh. So this year's program will include an IV stem cell, will include thermography, will include monthly chiropractic adjustments. We'll include what we have is called a decompression machine.
What's that? What's a decompression machine?
Decompression machine is specifically for the lower backs, so that we can rehydrate the cushion or rehydrate the disc in your lower back. So we use that right now for very, very chronic backs or people facing back surgery that maybe not want to do the stem cells, and they want to do everything they can until the stem cell, because it's based upon your body weight, based upon your mass, based upon what's going on. I mean, there's a monetary figure to that, and that's different on every single person.
Is it in as much as what you need to take for effectiveness?
Correct.
Okay. So they're trying to do everything they can, and then then they're like, okay, right. Might have to.
Right, and so then they're at that why, like, all right, either I'm gonna go down and have a surgical consult, or maybe I've already had a surgical consult, and I'm going to go that road, or let's say let's give stem cells a shot. But we're working on right now, and based upon the program will be based upon me and these other patients that are doing all of this, and we'll create a year program. So there'll be a year commitment.
Gotcha. And you follow it for a year, and then you're going to have, and since you guys are all doing it, you're going to have all of the data and the results. And
correct.
And then you're going to try and roll that out. Like if somebody wanted to do that, they just come down.
And we're completely roll that out.
Gotcha. What, do you have so the decompression chain, or no? Yeah. Decompression. Do you have what other kind of sports science things do you have going on down there?
So the cool thing we have is called PMF, and that's a pulsed electromagnetic frequency. And so that was designed in Italy back in the 60s. And right now they use that. I mean, they use it all across the sports arenas, even in the horses. So they actually have a blanket that goes on the race horses, but the owners have to sign a waiver that they can't use the PMF blanket on the horse 24 hours prior to race, because it's the advantage of what that does. So what does PMF do? So it's a magnetic field, but it pulsates the cell. So within the cell that's where the cell that's where the oxygen comes from. That's where ATP is produced.
Right. ATP.
And so as you're stimulating these hundreds of thousands of cells, you're getting uptake of oxygen. You're getting this increase of ATP. And so the more oxygen you have, then you have more oxygenation of the tissues. So you have more oxygen readily to use. So they are not allowed to use that 24 hours prior to a race. So we use that for anything, unless you're pregnant, have a pacemaker, but we use it for bone healing. We use it for depression. We use it for bipolar. We use it for wound healing, obviously low back pain, neck pain, shoulder rehab. We use it for people that's had their knee replaced and then they're still having some issues. So we can do that right through even right through the knee metal. I mean, the metal in the knee or the metal in the hip. So it doesn't make a difference that what kind of metal that's in there. It can still be used, but it magnifies the healing up to 10-fold.
So anyone that has a sports injury, or
anytime anybody has a sports injury,
is this something that's widely adopted?
It's pretty widely adopted. It's been out there for a long time. It's new. I mean, it's new to people because it's just more held in the professional sports or the higher end collegiate.
Gotcha.
Or your however many $1 million a racehorse costs. I don't know, but
that's where they've been using it up to this point.
That's where they've been using it a lot.
How long does something like that take?
Depends on your condition. If a bone, let's say a bone fracture, it'll heal that in half the time.
No kidding,
and yeah, and we've seen that right here in our little office in Burlington.
That's good to know. I'm glad people are hearing about that.
Yeah, and we've had that. We've been going on that for like 8 years.
Interesting. That's very cool. What about a hyperbaric chamber? Do you have that yet?
Not yet.
Didn't the school get that or somewhere around here? The high school got it?
The hospital.
The hospital got it.
Yeah, the hospital has one, but right now they're only using it for wound healing, is my understanding. But there's so many advances that that could be done with. And in the world of stem cell, there's lots of research out there on PubMed.gov of using a hyperbaric chamber in conjunction with the stem cell. So you get your stem cell injection. Now I don't know the biochemistry behind this because I haven't studied because I don't have access to it yet. Where you have your stem cell injection, there's probably a period of time before you go start having a hyperbaric chamber sessions done. But there's something to that where the hyperbaric chamber will magnify the viability of the stem cells.
I wonder why that is. You mean if you do the sessions before and then during and after, or? My
understanding is you do the stem cells and then you do your hyperbaric chambers for a period of time. Is my understanding.
You know what I was thinking about too, and this will age a little bit, but you know who's probably tried all this like 30 years ago? Bill Romanowski. Do you remember him? He was doing all of this stuff.
I know. I used to treat Bill Romanowski when I was with the Broncos.
Really? Because I was going to say he had the hyperbaric chamber.
He had it in his house.
At his house, and then he was probably doing stem cells. So you never know. I mean, if it was cutting edge, he was doing it.
Right.
So, what else? Any other cutting edge things that are going on? Or
we got methylation. So methylation is a new kid on the block that was we just got certified last August in Seattle. And so we have a level 2 certification December 3rd and 4th in Orlando. So methylation occurs in every singular tissue. So methylation is called a methyl group. So it's extremely biochemistry driven. So the easiest way to say it is like if you got a Ford, you can go to the Ford dealership or wherever you take your car because your check engine light comes on, right? Mm-hmm. So the check engine comes on. Well, then if I walk across that bridge again, now it's the human that has a symptom, right? So you take it into the car, into the dealership, they hook it up to the computer, they hook it up and they say, well, it's throwing this code.
Yep.
Based upon this code, this sensor's out of place or this sensor's bad or faulty or plugged or whatever, mm-hmm. right? So the methylation, so we do a methylation test and it comes up and it tells us what kind of, it's called a SNP. So a single nucleopeptide, but what tells us is that gene has mutated in this methylation pathway that occurs in every organism, every cell in our body. So if that becomes mutated via the sensor is plugged or bad, then will the car run right? Probably not. Or the check engine light saying, hey, you need to get this fixed before your engine stops or engine crashes or something else is going to go wrong. So in the world of methylation is the same thing. So where we start having mutated genes, we still function, but now we may not function at the same level that we used to function at. Or now maybe we have, we started noticing blood sugar issues. We started noticing hypertension issues, but maybe it's not. Maybe everything with my heart is fine and my hypertension is coming from my liver. And potential is that there is a methylation issue going on with my liver. So then we add a very specific vitamin supplementation to fix that methylation group, which in turn can fix the liver, which in turn has a potential of changing the blood pressure. And so that's really new.
Yeah. How does somebody know to take that test, or what does it involve?
Methylation, as I just had a conversation with this representative on Tuesday, is that she asked what can we do for you? I said, I need literature so patients can understand what this is, because we cannot survive if that wasn't going on. But it's one of those things that we don't look at it. It's like brain-based wellness. You know, you can look yourself, or I don't know if people look at themselves in the mirror all the time. I imagine somebody does. But either, brushing your teeth, combing your hair, plucking your gray eyebrows out or whatever, right? But we never pay attention to what's inside our brain until we start out one day when we go grab that bottle and
something's not right.
And then I'm trying to hide my trimmer.
Or okay.
So then they're starting like, okay, I need to go check this out. So my point is that every single person that has a heartbeat should have methylation testing done.
What is that? What do you do?
Two different ways. We can do send you out. We can do a DNA swab, send that out, and you can go have a what's it called? 123Me or something like that. 23andMe.
Close.
So you can, so you can have that, but that's like a general broad. That shows that you may have what's called the MTHFR gene. That's a mutated methylation gene that's really, really common. But we can, with the new studies that we're bringing on board, that we can do this via blood or saliva, and we can really nail those down to be very, very specific.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. But it's really difficult to explain because it's so biochemistry driven. The easiest way for me to explain that is by the code of your car. Your car's throwing this code. That means that you get this sensor problem. We got to fix the sensor, and you're on your way. You're throwing this methylation group or this mutated gene that's creating this pathway not to be operating properly. You're not getting conversion of, like, say, your own body's hydrogen peroxide is not getting converted into hydrogen and carbon. And so you're getting this oxidative stress built up inside of you because of this methylation gene. So we give them a certain supplement, the very, very specific supplement, and then retest in 90 days and see where we're at.
So is that something that would work with, I'm hearing a lot about, and I feel like we're getting more awareness around our gut, right? The biome and how important that is to overall wellness in the whole body.
Yeah.
Is that something that would test for that, or what?
No.
Do you know anything about that? I mean, what's going on with that? Because I know it's kind of rising up. I'm seeing more articles about it,
and there is a lot about gut health. They actually say the gut's your second brain. And Dr. Perlmutter, that's who he's an MD neurologist. His first book wrote Grain Brain. And then he just came out with another one, the Brain Master or something like that. But the Grain Brain was really massive, and it talked about how that ties into the biome, but it also really ties into the gluten sensitivity. And what's it called? It's called a protein called zonulin. That if you have these issues, then you end up having like what's called a leaky gut. And so then that colon, you can't have your proper biome or microbiome in that colon if your colon is leaching out all of these toxins. So leaky gut is simply like, instead of like having a nice brand new garden hose as your colon, then you have a soaker hose in there, and so these toxins are leaching out inside of you.
That's not good.
No.
How do you get tested for that? Or what are the symptoms of that?
So that could be tested, done a smear test, which is through your stool samples. That can be done via blood. Vibrant America, that's who we use. We use Vibrant America to test, and that's all blood.
Huh. And how does somebody know if they have that, like leaky gut?
I'm not
putting.
Do you feel like crap?
Huh.
And you're bloated all the time.
I personally don't, but
you may have your MD may say, you may have irritable bowel. You may want to get tested for celiac, autoimmune disease for the colon. There's multiple things. You may have an outbreak of acne.
And they're thinking a lot of that does have to do with your gut now.
Absolutely.
We didn't used to realize the correlation, I don't think.
No.
Huh. Very interesting.
No. And the other thing about the gut is that 90% of your serotonin, so dopamine and serotonin is your two feel-good neurotransmitters. 90% of that is produced in your colon. So think about this. I'm back to McDonald's again. But if you're having McDonald's 1 or 2 meals a day, or maybe even 1 meal a day.
That's not good. That guy remember that movie he did where he ate McDonald's for like 30 days and like almost died?
Yep. Yeah. So now what happens when you're putting all that processed in, your colon's not healthy, right?
Right.
So if your colon's not healthy, and yet the colon produces 90% of your serotonin.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And serotonin is one of your two feel-good neurotransmitters. It makes what makes you happy. It makes what makes you want to have life, right? So here you go. If you're eating McDonald's every day, I guarantee you have a shitty outlook.
Yeah, but well put. Yeah, I didn't know that 90% of serotonin was in your colon.
Yeah, it's produced out of there.
It's produced out of your colon.
Yeah.
So what happens if, you hear about people that get colon cancer or whatever, they take out a big part of their colon. So do they get injections? Can you get serotonin? Like, is there a way to replace it? I don't know. I know I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I don't know that answer.
Huh. Interesting. Well, all right. Well, and then, I appreciate you coming in today. And
Absolutely.
Then I want to have you come back when you get your results,
okay.
In 3 months or 6 months for sure. What if anyone wants to get more information that's listening to this on iTunes or watching it about any of this stuff? Where's the best resource? Do you want to give out your websites on both?
Sure.
Or?
I mean, you can always call the office 719-346-7993. And we can any questions there we can help you with, or you can go to our website. It's www.rejuvenatestemcellcenter.com.
Okay. And then on the other stuff as well, is that your other?
Yeah. So then on all the other stuff on what we do in our office, then you can go to www.ramoschiropractic and wellnesscenter.com.
Okay. Well, perfect. Thanks again for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll have you back.
All right.
All right.
Plan.
Thanks.
Okay.